Thank you, David. This is a tough time to be speaking just before you eat lunch. So let me first tell you that rather than discuss graduate schools, I want you to know you're going to make a big decision of where you're going to spend the next couple of years studying. And it's not like college. College serves lots of purposes. Graduate school is more purposeful. And it's not just a matter of what school you go to, but it's where you go to school. Because, let's be serious, professors only work a handful of hours a week. And graduate school classes take about 1/3 the amount of time of undergraduate. And so where you go, the setting, the city, the community, has a huge part of your learning. And so many of the things you think about are not just in the courses, but what opportunities are available to while you're in graduate school. What kinds of networks can you build? And so I think we should be aware that when you make a decision, it's where you're going to live as well as who you're going to study with. Now let me just put this water down and talk to you about some of the current trends. And first is that we're seeing an environment where most of the innovation, creativity is not in Washington, it's at the cities and the states around the country. And this is part of our national history. When the federal government withdraws, which it is doing now, even with the Democratic president, whether it's austerity or sequester, the action is always going to be in towns and cities, whether it's the new mayor of Los Angeles, Garcia, or the mayor of Chicago, or the mayor of New York, or Walsh in Boston. That's where you're seeing the opportunities for young people, not in the aging, decrepit, declining kind of culture of Washington, D.C., which after the Supreme Court decision yesterday is going to get worse. It's only going to get worse as that kind of environment gets staler. So what does this mean? Well, I want you to think about this as when you think about your career, you have to think of that's where the great opportunities will be. And I think that we'll talk about New York because NYU is in New York, and we should be serious. If you're going to be in New York, the most exciting part of New York is the area immediately around you. Now, I can't see what we're doing up there, but we'll try to tell you. The first is, unlike other cities, you should know New York is growing. It continues to grow. People want to come here. Since 2007, we've attracted more people from the rest of the country than from overseas, because until then, much of the population growth in New York was from around the world. And today, New York is almost 40% foreign-born. And unlike other places, we're not getting people from one part of the world, but from all parts. Latin America, Asia, West Africa. This is a city which is constantly replenishing itself. And so unlike other places which sometimes resist new blood, we welcome it and affects everything we do, the food, the culture, the music, just the experience of being in New York. And it's not just people coming here from other countries. One thing you should know is that because we're on an island, the island of Manhattan, it's not just people who live here. Every day, 4 million people come here, whether it's to study, to learn. It's different kinds of places, not just public service, but seminaries, medical schools, all kinds of environments, but also restaurants, theater, coming here to meet people, and of course, museums and culture. This is a city which is far bigger in the daytime population, as we show here, than just those who live or work here. Now, one of the great things you should know is that this is a city which has had enormous shocks. In 2001, it was an attack on the World Trade Center. 2,800 people died. Only about a mile from here, more people died at that site than any other attack in our nation except for the Civil War Battle of Antietam, if you remember that. I'm probably the only one old enough to remember it. Now, what's interesting is that Sandy was about 1.25 years ago, and we're still dealing with the consequences of rebuilding, but it's brought out the best in New York because now we're trying to figure out how to rebuild with more creative ways. And one of them is the bottom slide there, Brooklyn Bridge Park, which did not sustain much damage because it had been built in environmentally sustainable ways, unlike other parts of the Rockaways in Staten Island. Now, I really want you to know when you come to New York, you have to realize one of the benefits is this is a place where lots of people are in higher education. It used to be that they would say Boston's a college town. New York has more people in college than those who live in Boston as a total city. And it's continuing to grow. And a lot of controversy about NYU's expansion, but every college and university in New York is building because this is a magnet for people from around the world. This is the place where they come to learn and many times to stay. Now, those of you who should know, we also have to realize the structure of opportunities. This is a restaurant 1 block away on Broadway in Lafayette, and these are my friends from Oaxaca, Mexico. And I went in there, and of course, why are they here? Well, they came here because their brothers had gone to the Salinas Valley of Route 101, if you know California, and they're picking lettuce there. It's far better to wash lettuce on Broadway and Lafayette Street than to be picking lettuce because these guys are eventually going to form their own restaurants and move up the career ladder rather than in Northern California. If you're picking lettuce, they haven't changed that technology in about 60 years. Now, let me just point out a couple things to know and understand about New York. One is that there are certain changes in the city, and it once was a great financial capital, still is. It was a great capital for manufacturing. It hasn't been that way for many years. Healthcare is growing. In fact, you see now we have more people who work in healthcare in Manhattan than live in the entire cities of Albany and Syracuse combined. It's amazing how the upstate part of New York kind of is emptying out all the brains and talent flowing down to New York. And what's important is that this is a city which is not like those in Abu Dhabi or Dubai where they're just building cities out of sand. We constantly are rebuilding what we have and changing what we have. This is the great challenge of the cities. It's reinventing themselves. And here you see Times Square. Today it's replaced pornography and adult entertainment with visitors, and we took the streets and turned them over to pedestrians. If you want to shop there, the retail stores are open 18 hours a day, longer than any other suburban mall in the world. Now, what I do want to point out is that one of the great changes is right about a mile from here, where the area known as the meat market has now become a high-tech gravity center. That's an old mob-based supermarket. Now it's the site of the Apple store. And I always tell people, if you want to know where to study, make sure you're within half a mile of an Apple store. We have one at Prince in Mulberry. There are certain barometers. If there is an Apple store half a mile away, that means there aren't smart people there. Now, I wasn't trying to make fun of you. This is the building on the left is the old headquarters of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. It's about 2 million square feet. Now it's wholly owned by Google. And if you've ever been there, it's one of the great transformations. They took a great building. It's now a high-tech center. And everybody around there is now finding out that that's become a magnet. And what does that mean? Well, people want to be around there because it's a great place to not work, but also to have fun. And that's the High Line, which is an elevated railroad converted into a park. Once again, an example of how the kinds of things you do in New York cover everything: the economy, health, physical changes, the environment, and here, of course, recreation. And one point you should know is that most of you are going to wind up, if you come to NYU, you're going to discover that the real new energy center is across the East River in Brooklyn. This is Williamsburg. This was the largest sugar refinery in the Western world 100 years ago, and now it's going to be the site of a vast 1/4 mile waterfront plaza and new housing and commercial space. And I think what I want to highlight here is that the energy that is occurring in Manhattan is not just here. It's across the river, both the Hudson and the East River. And the point is that people are living close by NYU because of transportation, and this is where the growth is. The people in today's modern metropolitan areas are not living 100 miles away or 60 miles away in suburbs. One person is staying home doing the wash, another person commuting. No, everybody is working, and they're all living closer to that. And what we see here is both the areas to the west and east of us are the fastest growing sources of our population. I have to move fast because many people feel I can't do 36 slides in 10 minutes. And I just want you to know that for those of you who are night owls, this is the pattern of the subway, the L train, at night. And what we want to point out is that this train is more crowded at night because people are not using the subways just to get to work. Now, if you ever go to Boston, you know that they close the T at midnight, they close the bars at 1 a.m. The only city in America which has 24-hour subway service for all parts of it is New York. They have a little piece of Chicago, the Chicago L, a little piece runs 24 hours just so people can get home at night. This is a city which never sleeps. The subways used to be crowded from 10 in the morning, from 7 to 10 and then 4 to 8. Now they're always filled. They're safer than they've ever been. And what you should know is that we've taken lines that used to be empty and now we've jammed them up. I think you should know, though, it's not just a subway that's being used. If you go over to the Puck building where the Wagner School is, you'll see a bike share system right in front. This is the growth of biking in New York. We've gone from having biking being almost impossible to being too easy for some people. And what I want to show you is that it's not just biking. One of the things that makes cities, not just New York, is that you can walk. And then nobody does more walking than New Yorkers. I just want you to know that for most of the country, and this is what's interesting, people don't walk to work. As you can see, in New York, this is 10% who only walk to work, and everybody else is just walking when they're getting off a bus or subway or taxi. Now, finally, I want to get to the point of the future. How many of you know this is Serge Brin of Google? This is the new Google Glass. And what's interesting is that New York is a combination of face-to-face and high technology. They're not at odds. They reinforce each other because the very information you get in a personal exchange then becomes part of a global economy. And here you see, the future is you're going to be having computing on your, we're not going to have anyone talk about purple tights. You're going to be talking about the computer built into your arm and the glasses which are now doing what you have to carry on your iPad. And the future is that you're going to be a walking computer and the buildings will pick up that sensor. And to prove this, New York has become much more of an information capital. than ever before. It's not just the center of television. I always tell people, if you go to LA, it's a center of nonfiction. Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, the kinds of things that you have to live in Fantasyland. But this is the center for almost every news production company in the Western world, but it's also the center now for everybody who gets up in the morning, is looking at a New York scene on television, increasingly at night as well. What I want to point out is that the cities gives you these opportunities because there's so much more than just a one-industry town like Washington or a place which has declining industries like Detroit. We have many which are growing. And of course, the part of it is we're linked to the rest of the world. And now, when someone said earlier, well, you study about New York. Well, I always feel if you understand New York, you can get problems anywhere. We have people who go out and tell you cancer is caused by smoking, and they spend 40 years telling you with commercials. But until the mayor of New York banned smoking, nothing happened. And then 48% of the world copied New York. And when you go to Ireland, you can't smoke in a bar. That started in New York. And I think you should appreciate that. It's the ability of public sector activities to resonate from this place that have an impact, whether it's biking or pedestrians or public health. And remember, BPA is banned in cities, not in the federal level. We have plastic bags. We have many cities that don't even let you buy water in a plastic bottle. What I think you should know is that healthcare, environment, those environmental kind of innovations, as well as economic development, are starting at the local level. They're not starting from the top down anymore. And why I wanted to end with something to appreciate, which is, this is the site of used to be one of the greatest collection of meth heads, drug users, potheads, and criminals, Union Square Park. And today, what does it fill with? People shopping for fresh food. As you know, local food is one of the great new innovations, and everyone who sells food here has to be selling it from a place that's grown fresh within about 150 miles of here. Now, it's at 14th Street, and if you understand the higher education industry in New York, it's all running from Madison Square Park to right down to Houston Street. This is the center of gravity. About 250,000 people are studying in this area. But what's more important is that Union Square Park is an example where one of our graduates from the WAGTalk School was involved in helping turn a park into not just a place of trees, but a place of activity. And it was done through now with the Business Improvement District. But I wanted to highlight the fact that what goes on here is not limited to the public sector, it's the nonprofit sector, it's the ability of kind of people to be much more aggressive in using the instruments of both nonprofit and the public sector together to make cities more livable. So what does this mean for what you should do in the future? Well, one, I think you have to figure out quickly that when you go to graduate school, it's not just what you learn in the classroom, but the kind of networks you develop professionally, the experiences you have while you're in school, and most of all, I think, the chance to know that when you finish, you've gained much more than the knowledge from the actual required courses, but the experience you get when you're here. And if you want, I can be happy to talk to you about Wagner and NYU later. Thank you very much.